She thought a human couldn't handle her. Until the morning came. The reluctant refuge. The meteorite shower came without warning, a glittering death sentence across the vacuum of space. Nyxara's small reconnaissance vessel shuddered as the first fragments struck its hull, warning lights flashing crimson across her navigation console. Her violet eyes narrowed as she assessed the damage, fingers dancing across controls with practiced precision. Systems failing. Emergency landing required, the ship's AI announced with infuriating calm. Nyxara cursed in the melodic language of Ethereum, her homeworld. The nearest sanctuary was Earth's lunar outpost, a primitive research station operated by humans. The thought made her lip curl. In the 3 decades since first contact, she had avoided direct interaction with the fragile emotional creatures. As third commander of the Crystalline Guard, she considered humans beneath her notice. Scientifically interesting, perhaps, but ultimately insignificant. The lunar outpost grew larger in her view screen, a collection of white domes against the gray desolation. She transmitted the emergency landing codes and braced for impact. The landing was rough but controlled, her ship skidding across the regolith before coming to rest beside the main airlock. 20 minutes later, having secured her vessel, Nyxara stood at the entrance of the human facility, her imposing height forcing her to duck beneath the airlock frame. Her iridescent skin shimmered even in the artificial light, geometric patterns shifting across her face and arms as her emotions fluctuated between irritation and reluctant gratitude. "Welcome to Lunar Outpost 7, a calm voice greeted her. The human was tall for his species, but still a head shorter than Nyxara. He had warm brown skin and eyes the color of Earth's oceans. His face was framed by close-cropped dark hair and a neatly trimmed beard. "I'm Dr. Julian Mercer, astrophysicist and current Sol resident." He extended a hand, then smoothly withdrew it when she merely stared. "The solar storm that damaged your ship has knocked out long-range communications. We're isolated for at least 12 hours. Nyxara assessed him with military precision, physically unimposing, no visible weapons, intelligent eyes, no threat. "I require shelter until repairs are possible," she stated flatly. "I am Nyxara, 3rd Commander, Crystalline Guard of Ethereum." Julian nodded. "I know who you are, Commander. Your people's delegation visited the International Space Agency last year." He gestured toward the interior. "The facility is small but adequate. I have emergency rations compatible with your physiology." "You prepared for Ethereum visitors?" This surprised her. A small smile touched his lips. "I prepare for possibilities. It's what scientists do." As she followed him through the narrow corridors, Nyxara studied his movements. He walked with quiet confidence, not the nervous energy she expected. When they reached the main research area, he efficiently cleared space for her, explaining the facility's systems without condescension or unnecessary detail. "The storm will peak in approximately 6 hours," Julian explained, displaying atmospheric readings on a holographic projection. "After that, repairs should be possible." He paused, observing her with those unnervingly perceptive eyes. "Until then, Commander, this space is yours as much as mine." Nyxara settled into a chair designed for humans, finding it surprisingly comfortable. "Your hospitality is noted," she said stiffly, "though unnecessary. I require minimal comfort." Julian didn't seem offended by her coldness. Instead, he simply nodded and returned to his work, giving her space without appearing intimidated. As the hours stretched before them, Nyxara realized with growing discomfort that this human's quiet dignity might prove more challenging than any battle she had faced among the stars. Breaking ice. The lunar night stretched endlessly beyond the reinforced windows, stars gleaming like scattered diamonds against velvet darkness. 6 hours into her unwanted stay, Nyxara found herself watching Julian as he worked. His movements were economical, his focus absolute as he monitored the storm's progress while simultaneously analyzing data from his cosmic radiation experiments. "Your silence is efficient," she remarked unexpectedly, breaking the quiet that had settled between them. Julian glanced up, a slight smile touching his lips. "Among my colleagues, I'm known for talking too little. They say I disappear into my work. On Ethereum, silence denotes respect or contemplation. Your species tends toward excessive communication. And yet here you are, initiating conversation." His observation carried no judgment, only gentle amusement. Nyxara's skin pattern shifted to deeper blue, a sign of intellectual engagement that Julian couldn't possibly recognize. Scientific curiosity. I've studied human physiological responses but rarely observed them in isolation. Julian set aside his tablet. And what have you observed so far? That you lack the nervous energy most humans display in my presence. You don't fidget or fill silence with unnecessary words. She tilted her head. It's unexpected. 3 years alone on a lunar outpost teaches patience. Or perhaps I was always this way, which is why I volunteered for solitary assignment. He gestured to the modest living space. Would you like tea? I grow herbs in the hydroponics section. The casual offer surprised her. On Ethereum, sharing sustenance carried ceremonial significance. Before she could respond, a shrill alarm pierced the air, followed by flickering lights. Life support fluctuation, Julian explained, already moving. The storm must have affected the secondary power grid. Nixara followed him to the environmental control station. Your backup systems are primitive, but effective with the right adjustments. His fingers flew across the control panel, bypassing automated systems. When a particularly complex sequence appeared, he glanced at her. The manual override requires 2 operators. Could you enter this code sequence when I give the signal? She moved beside him, noting how he didn't hesitate to trust her with his survival. When he nodded, she executed the sequence flawlessly. The alarm ceased and the light stabilized. Your response time is impressive, Julian noted. Combat reflexes, she replied, suddenly aware of their proximity. The human radiated warmth in a way her people did not. Your solution was creative. You modified the standard protocol. Standard protocols assume standard conditions. We're experiencing anything but. Julian checked the readings. We should monitor this hourly. The storm is intensifying. They settled into a routine, checking systems, exchanging observations. During one such check, Julian shared stories of Earth's varied cultures, describing oceans and forests with such vivid detail that Nixara found herself curious despite her prejudice. Your attachment to your world seems excessive, she commented. Ethereum warriors are taught to view all planets as temporary grounds. Perhaps that's the fundamental difference, Julian replied. Humans form deep connections to places, to people. It's not weakness, it's our nature. When the primary lights failed completely, they worked by emergency illumination, shoulders occasionally brushing as they moved through the cramped space. Julian explained his research on cosmic radiation with unexpected passion, his theories surprisingly advanced. Your understanding of interstellar radiation patterns aligns with Ethereum science, she admitted reluctantly. High praise indeed, Julian responded with a smile that transformed his serious face, creating small lines around his eyes. Perhaps our species aren't so fundamentally different in our quest for knowledge. As they shared a meal of synthesized proteins and Julian's hydroponically grown vegetables, Nixara found herself speaking of Ethereum's crystalline forests and aurora-filled skies. The human listened with genuine interest, asking insightful questions that revealed true comprehension. When Julian's hand accidentally brushed hers while passing a water container, Nixara didn't immediately withdraw. The brief contact sent an unfamiliar sensation through her normally controlled nervous system. The storm's peak has passed, Julian noted, checking readings. But communications remain down. It seems we have more time to continue our cultural exchange. Looking at his tired but interested expression, Nixara realized she no longer found the prospect of extended companionship entirely unwelcome. Unspoken language darkness enveloped the lunar outpost as the main power systems finally succumbed to the storm's intensity. Only the soft blue glow of emergency lighting illuminated the space where Nixara and Julian worked side by side, attempting to restore basic functions. The primary circuit board is fried, Julian said, his voice calm despite the potentially dire situation. We need to reroute through the auxiliary system. He pushed a heavy access panel that refused to budge. Without comment, Nixara moved beside him, her superior strength easily shifting the panel. Their hands met in the cramped compartment, fingers brushing against exposed wiring. The contact sent a strange current through Nixara that had nothing to do with electricity. Sorry, Julian murmured, though he didn't immediately withdraw. Space is tight in here. Ethereum warriors are accustomed to discomfort, she replied, her voice softer than intended. Working by touch more than sight, they managed to reconnect critical systems. When minimal lighting returned, Julian sighed with relief. That buys us oxygen for another 24 hours at least. Nixara studied his profile in the dim light. noticing the fatigue etched around his eyes. You require rest. Your species has limited endurance. Julian laughed softly. I've gone 3 days without sleep during research breakthroughs, but yes, some rest would be welcome. He hesitated. Do Ethereum warriors sleep? We enter restorative trance states, she explained. Less frequently than humans, but similarly necessary. They settled in the small common area, the only sound the gentle hum of partially functioning life support systems. Julian retrieved a small device from his quarters, activating it to project holographic images on the wall. My research includes cataloging Earth's biospheres, he explained as vibrant images of oceans, forests, and mountains appeared. For preservation and potential replication on other worlds. Nixara watched, transfixed, as dolphins leaped through turquoise waters and ancient trees reached toward clouded skies. Your world contains unexpected beauty, she admitted. We have nothing like your oceans on Ethereum. What is your world like? Julian asked, genuine curiosity warming his voice. After a moment's hesitation, Nixara raised her hand toward him, palm forward. I could show you if you're willing. My species possesses limited telepathic abilities, primarily for sharing sensory impressions. Julian's eyes widened slightly. That's remarkable. Yes, I'd very much like to see. She hadn't planned this intimacy, this breaking of protocol. Contact telepathy was typically reserved for clan members, not aliens encountered during emergency landings. Yet something about Julian's quiet acceptance made the offering feel natural. Your mind will need to be receptive, she instructed, moving closer on the small bench they shared. Relax and try not to resist the images. When her palm gently touched his forehead, Nixara felt the initial shock of contact with an alien consciousness, then, surprisingly, ease. Julian's mind opened to her with scientific curiosity rather than fear, accepting the connection with remarkable adaptability. She showed him Ethereum's floating crystal cities, the purple-hued skies where 3 moons created perpetual twilight. She shared memories of ceremonial combat dances, the sound of harmonic crystal forests singing in summer winds, the taste of spiced nectar during harvest festivals. When she finally withdrew her hand, Julian's eyes remained closed for several heartbeats, his expression one of wonder. Thank you, he whispered when his eyes finally opened. That was extraordinary. The intensity of his gaze unsettled her. No one had ever looked at her with such genuine appreciation, not for her combat skills or strategic mind, but for the world she carried within her. Your mind accepted the connection with unusual ease, she said. Most non-Ethereum species experience disorientation. Perhaps I'm adaptable. His hand tentatively reached for hers. Or perhaps some connections transcend physiological differences. When their fingers intertwined, Nixara didn't pull away. The simple contact felt more significant than any elaborate Ethereum bonding ritual she had experienced. Julian's fingers were different from hers, 5 instead of her 4, lacking the iridescence of her skin, yet the warmth between their palms felt right. The storm has created a unique circumstance, Nixara said quietly. On my world, warriors are taught that adversity reveals truth. Julian's thumb traced gentle patterns on her hand. And what truth has this revealed to you? That I may have been, she searched for the right word, hasty in my assessment of human capacity. His smile in response held no triumph, only warmth. Cultural understanding always begins with individual connection. As the artificial night continued around them, Nixara allowed herself to remain close to Julian, their silence now comfortable rather than strained. Beyond the outpost walls, the solar storm raged on, particles dancing across the lunar surface, violent, beautiful, and transformative. Storm within. The lunar dawn was still hours away when Nixara awoke from her trance state, a strange heaviness in her limbs. She had rested beside Julian, their shoulders almost touching as he slept on the narrow observation bench. The human's breathing was deep and even, his face peaceful in repose. Attempting to stand, she felt an unusual sensation. Her equilibrium faltered, her normally precise movements uncoordinated. The room tilted alarmingly. A diagnostic sweep of her internal systems revealed the problem. Earth's unique radiation combined with the solar storm was affecting her body chemistry. She tried to reach the medical supplies, but collapsed instead. her iridescent skin flaring with bright patterns that reflected her distress. Julian woke instantly, years of emergency training evident in his swift response. "Nixara? What's happening?" "Atmospheric reaction," she managed, her voice strained. "My species, sensitive to certain radiation patterns." Without hesitation, Julian lifted her, his strength surprising as he carried her to the medical bay. His touch was confident yet gentle, his voice steady as he asked precise questions about her physiology. "Your skin temperature is elevated," he noted, scanning her with medical instruments. "Is this similar to any condition recognized in your medical databases?" Nixara struggled to focus. "Crystal fever. Rare but documented. Requires stabilizing compounds." Julian worked methodically, accessing the outpost's xenobiology database, comparing compounds safe for Ethereum biology. "I need to synthesize a stabilizer," he explained, already programming the medical replicator. "The storm has intensified certain radiation spectrums that are affecting your cellular structure." Through waves of discomfort, Nixara watched him work. No hesitation, no panic, just focused intelligence. When had she last witnessed such dedication from anyone outside her warrior clan? The fever intensified, bringing with it uncharacteristic vulnerability. Memories surfaced unbidden. Childhood fears, combat failures, moments of isolation even among her own kind. She spoke aloud without meaning to, words tumbling in her native language. Julian returned with a synthesized compound. "This should help regulate your system," he said, preparing an oxygen mask modified for her facial structure. "Your translator is failing, but I understand enough of your language to follow." "What did you hear?" she asked weakly as he placed the mask over her face. His eyes met hers. "That even the strongest warriors carry burdens. That excellence can be isolating." He adjusted the compound's flow rate. "That you've never felt truly understood even among your own people." The medication began to work, clearing her mind while leaving an unusual emotional openness in its wake. "How could you understand what I barely acknowledged to myself?" Julian sat beside her, monitoring her vital signs. "Because beneath our different biologies and cultures, some experiences are universal." His hand found hers. "I've spent my life seeking knowledge among the stars, earning respect but rarely connection. My colleagues call me brilliant but difficult, too intense, too focused." "Your focus saved my life," Nixara said softly, "and your presence has saved me from something else entirely." His voice dropped to a near whisper. 3 years alone teaches you to survive but not to live." "Not really." As the medication stabilized her system, Nixara found herself studying Julian with new perception. The careful way he monitored her recovery, the gentle efficiency of his movements, the depth of concern in his eyes, all spoke of strength her warrior culture might not recognize but could not deny. When he helped her sit up, his hand supporting her back, she leaned into his touch rather than away. The gesture was instinctive, unplanned, a surrender more difficult than any battle stance. "In Ethereum culture," she said quietly, "warriors are taught that vulnerability is weakness." Julian's fingers traced the now calming patterns on her arm. "In scientific terms, vulnerability is often the precursor to discovery." Their faces were close now, differences stark yet somehow insignificant, her violet eyes meeting his blue ones, her iridescent skin against his warm brown tones. When she raised her hand to touch his face, the contact sent ripples of sensation across her palm. "This is not protocol," she murmured. His smile was gentle. "Few significant discoveries follow protocol." The kiss that followed was an exploration, tentative at first, then deeper. Different anatomies finding unexpected harmony. His lips were softer than she had imagined, his embrace both gentle and secure. The telepathic connection flared without conscious effort, emotions flowing between them, his wonder, her surprise, shared desire transcending their differences. When they finally separated, Nixara rested her forehead against his, a gesture of intimacy among her people. "Your Earth has many unexpected effects," she whispered. Julian's laugh was soft against her skin. "I believe the effect is uniquely you, not Earth." They remained entwined as the medication completed its work, speaking in low voices of their worlds, their lives, the paths that had brought them to this unexpected intersection. Physical differences became points of fascination rather than barriers. Her luminescent patterns responding to his touch, his skin warming beneath her fingers. As Nixera regained her strength, their connection deepened beyond the physical. In Julian's arms, she found herself sharing secrets no warrior would normally reveal. Doubts about her culture's isolation, questions about paths not taken. He listened without judgment, offering insights from his own journey of solitary exploration. Perhaps, she said as the medical bay's lights dimmed to simulate night, strength takes many forms I have yet to understand. Julian's arms tightened around her. And perhaps understanding is the greatest strength of all. Dawn's promise. The lunar horizon glowed with approaching dawn as communication systems finally crackled back to life. Julian and Nixera stood at the observation window, watching the slow emergence of light across the desolate landscape. Their hands were intertwined, a bridge between worlds neither had anticipated. Your ship's systems have fully recovered, Julian said, studying the diagnostic readout. And your retrieval team has established contact. They'll reach us within 3 hours. Nixera felt an unexpected tightness in her chest. 3 hours. After that, duty would reclaim her, the crystalline guard, her command position, the carefully structured life she had never questioned until now. My report will emphasize the scientific value of this encounter, she said, her formal tone belied by the gentle pressure of her fingers against his. The cultural exchange has provided valuable insights. Julian turned to her, his expression serious. Is that all this was to you? A cultural exchange? The question pierced through her practiced diplomatic responses. No, she admitted. It was unprecedented. Before Julian could respond, the communications panel chimed with an incoming transmission. The stern face of Commander Vextor, Nixera's superior, filled the screen. Third Commander, he addressed her sharply. Your disappearance caused considerable concern. The retrieval team reports your vessel sustained minimal damage. Explain your extended absence. Nixera straightened, years of military discipline asserting themselves. The solar radiation affected my physiological systems, Commander. The human scientist provided critical medical intervention. Vextor's eyes narrowed as he noticed Julian standing nearby. A fortunate coincidence that you encountered a specialist capable of treating Ethereum biology. Not coincidence, Julian interjected, stepping forward despite Nixera's warning glance. Preparation. The lunar outpost maintains comprehensive xenobiological data as part of our diplomatic protocols. The commander studied Julian with cold assessment. Your assistance to our officer is noted, human. The crystalline guard acknowledges the debt. When the transmission ended, tension filled the small control room. He suspects, Nixera said quietly. Does it matter? Julian asked. The question hung between them as they prepared for the arrival of the Ethereum retrieval team. Nixera gathered her few possessions while Julian compiled research data, both moving with reluctance, stealing glances when they thought the other wasn't looking. What happens when you return? Julian finally asked, breaking the weighted silence. Nixera's hands stilled over her equipment. I resume command. File reports. Continue diplomatic missions. And this, he gestured between them, becomes an interesting footnote in those reports. The pain in his voice matched the unfamiliar ache in her chest. My world values order, structure, clear hierarchies. Deviation is not encouraged. Yet you deviated the moment you showed me your world through telepathy, Julian reminded her. The moment you allowed yourself to see beyond your assumptions about humans. Before she could respond, the outpost's proximity alert sounded. The retrieval vessel had arrived early, already requesting docking clearance. Time had run out. At the airlock, Nixera stood rigid in her formal posture as 3 Ethereum warriors emerged. Their expressions registered surprise at her casual proximity to the human. Third Commander, the lead officer saluted. We are prepared to escort you immediately. Julian stepped forward, addressing the warriors directly. Before you depart, I've prepared research data regarding the solar storm's unusual properties. Information that could be valuable for future Ethereum expeditions in this sector. The lead warrior looked to Nixera for direction, clearly uncomfortable with direct communication from a human. In that moment, watching Julian stand confidently before warriors twice his size, Nixera made her decision. Lieutenant, inform Commander Vextor that I am initiating Protocol 7 Alpha. The warriors stiffened in surprise. 7 Alpha was rarely invoked, a protocol allowing for extended diplomatic engagement when significant cultural or scientific exchange was possible. On what grounds, Third Commander? The lieutenant asked carefully. Dr. Mercer's research on cosmic radiation patterns has direct applications for our crystalline technology, she stated formally. Additionally, his adaptive approach to xenobiology merits further study. I propose a 3-month exchange program, with Dr. Mercer serving as Earth's scientific representative to Ethereum. The stunned silence that followed was broken by Julian's barely contained smile. This exceeds standard protocol, the lieutenant finally managed. Nixara's skin shimmered with subtle patterns of determination. As Third Commander, I am authorized to make this assessment. Unless you wish to challenge my judgment? The warriors exchanged glances, then reluctantly stepped aside. We will convey your decision to command, the lieutenant said. The exchange participant must be prepared to depart within 1 planetary rotation. When they retreated to prepare the necessary documentation, Julian turned to Nixara in amazement. 3 months on Ethereum? Is that even possible? It's unprecedented, she admitted, but not forbidden. Your scientific credentials provide sufficient justification. Her formal tone softened as she added, and I find myself unwilling to conclude our research so abruptly. Julian's smile was radiant as he took her hands in his. I believe we've only begun to explore the most fascinating subject of all, the space between our differences. As the Ethereum vessel prepared for departure, they stood together at the observation window, watching Earth rise slowly above the lunar horizon, blue and green and swirled with white clouds. A world as different from Ethereum as Julian was from Nixara. My people have a saying, Julian murmured, his arm warm around her waist. The universe reveals its secrets to those willing to see beyond their assumptions. Nixara leaned against him, her warrior's posture relaxing. Perhaps that is a wisdom our worlds share after all. Beyond the window, stars beckoned, countless worlds with their own assumptions, their own barriers to be crossed. For the first time in her disciplined life, Nixara looked toward that vastness, not as a warrior assessing territory, but as an explorer anticipating discovery. The storm has passed, Julian observed, but I believe the most significant changes are just beginning. As the first full light of lunar dawn spilled across the outpost, Nixara's hand found Julian's, their fingers intertwining, different in form but perfectly aligned in purpose. Ahead lay uncertainty, challenge, the raised eyebrows of 2 worlds watching their unlikely bond. But in this moment, as light transformed the desolate landscape outside, both warrior and scientist stood together at the threshold of possibility, ready to prove that understanding could indeed be the greatest strength of all.